All right, so this will be a quick walkthrough on your Kali distribution after installation. So at this point, you should have installed Kali either into a VM or onto actual hardware. That's the assumption. This video will actually walk through some, I'll say, some key areas that you're going to want to know about as you start to work with Kali. So first up, I am recording, so if you are in the middle of, let's say, penetration testing efforts and you want to do screen grabs or I'll say live recordings to illustrate how you successfully completed an attack. Obviously I'm using VoiceOver. All of this is being natively completed within Kali. So you can simply do, right now it says stop recording, but normally it would say start recording. All right. You also have multiple workspaces. So we can choose which workspace we want to work with. So you can have multiple screens. So you can move certain tasks over to other screens to keep them organized better, we'll say. You also have this option here, which provides the audio output, mic levels, and screen brightness. You will most likely not be able to see that screen brightness based off of the video. Here we have wired connection information, so you can see that the wired settings. What are they? I'm connected at 100 megabits, and I do not have a VPN or a network proxy set up. We're going to continue with this. There's also wireless. So this is where you would go to select the network. So if you wanted to connect to a different network, you would select that here and then input the actual password. I'm not going to give you the password to those networks. There is a proxy setup here so that if you need to set up that manually, etc., that can be done here. You can turn Bluetooth on or off as needed. And then, of course, there is power settings information. So if you are on a laptop, you can actually control those. So those are all here. And then we have different options associated with power. There's a lot of different ways to get to the same items within Kali. We're going to show you, we'll say, within the order here of a sequence. So I'm going to go in. Your default account will be root. There will be no other accounts on Kali. If you want additional accounts, you'll need to add those users. And then you would go through the add user process and provide a name. You would set a password, etc. You could set up an enterprise login, or you could set up an administrator on the box. Root by default, the one that you're logging in with, is going to be basically the administrator. So in the Linux world, root is basically administrator. It has, in essence, quote, God privileges, unquote. So it can do pretty much everything. Typically in Linux distributions, they do not recommend you operate within a root login because you can do everything. And the reason they say that, because you might be saying, well, why wouldn't I want to do that? It will make your life easier under root. However, you can also mistakenly make configuration changes that have caused significant issues. So obviously, you're going to want to make sure you know what you're doing when you're making configuration changes. All right. So we're going to go ahead and close this. And let's see what else we have. So we have root. Okay, then we have, here is the power option. So here we would restart or power off. I'm going to cancel. We're also, so if you notice, I'm using both of these here. And then, of course, we have lock screen. And then we have basically configurations or settings. So this brings us back so I can see automatic date and time. Time zone, you could change that here. If you need a different time zone, you can change your format if you don't like 24-hour military style time. The about tells you what's things like the device name. By default, it's Kali, your memory, processor, graphics, etc. Okay, so in GNOME is the desktop version that we're using within, so that's the GUI or graphical user interface that we are using within Kali. Default applications tells you what your defaults for web, calendar, music, etc. all are. Okay, so while we're doing that, we're going to jump a little bit. So here is this file cabinet. which is basically a file explorer. And then it brings you to your home, which is root, okay? So we can go to desktop. Now, within this, these files here, obviously, are the files over here. We're going to go back to home. Documents has currently nothing in it. Anything that is downloaded is typically you can save into the download folder. I have no music. I have no pictures. If I do a print screen, so we'll do that now. If you notice, now there's a print screen. So if you're in the middle of doing something, you're like, I want to get a screen grab of what I'm doing, and you're not recording, you're like, but I want to capture this moment. I just hit the print screen button on the keyboard. Obviously, it drops it into pictures for you, and there is, in fact, that particular screen grab with information. All right, and then it tags it with date and time for you. All right, so pretty handy feature. Especially when you're doing pen testing. Videos, so videos, this actual screen recording that I'm making right now is dropped into videos, so which is pretty cool. And we're not going to mess with it right now because it's actually generating that file. This particular one we're going to do to illustrate trash. What we're going to do is, well, actually we can do this. We're going to select these and then move to trash. I'm going to move, oops. See what that file is. I'm going to save that. You'll see me clean up my desktop here a little bit. We're going to move to trash. So much like you see on, I'll say on Windows, once you delete something, it goes into the trash. It's not permanently deleted when you're using the graphical user interface or desktop here. I could then go to trash and do empty. This will then, boom, now they're permanently gone. All right. Now, if you're in command line, which we'll show shortly here, that's a little bit different. Okay. Those can go away pretty quickly. All right. So that is the features on the top right. Obviously, here is power, in essence, some power settings. We're not going to mess with that. We're going to go through what is on the left here. So we have Firefox. So this is Firefox is the default browser. It comes installed on Kali for you, and since I haven't used this distro in a little bit, it's going to probably take a few minutes or a few seconds there. I'm going to go ahead and open this, and we're going to go to Google. So now you should be pretty familiar once it loads here with what this browser will do. I'm not going to go through all the different tab things that you are going to want to, I'll say familiarize yourself with. If you have a Gmail account, you obviously could sign in here and then have this logged in on your browser. We're not going to dig through. There are some different pre-built links here for Kali. These are basically automatically built. There's even a getting started with Firefox option. We're not going to explore those in this tutorial. We're assuming that you know that to a degree on your own. This option here is the terminal. So we'll do a specific navigational video on command line within Linux. So Linux, especially once we start getting into CAN bus features and socket CAN and CAN utils, you're going to need to be able to manage and operate and navigate effectively within the command line. And this can be a struggle, especially if it's your first time. Those of you who've done this before, it should be second nature. But so a quick print working directory is PWD. We'll refresh this going forward, but and then ls is list. So that lists everything within and then you can do command options. And again, we'll reiterate this. But that gives me a little bit more detailed view of that. All right, we're going to go ahead and close this. Like I said, we will do a specific view. I've already covered the file explorer, and then here is the recents, so what you've worked on recently. There is the Metasploit framework. All right, so this is a pre-built icon within the tray here. There is Armitage. So both Metasploit framework and Armitage are basically pen testing attack style applications. Burp Suite, kind of like man in the middle. Maltego is social media tools. There's the Beef framework as well. There's the Faraday IDE. So this is in essence a integrated development environment for things like Python. And then of course we have LeafPad. LeafPad is your default, basically kind of like Notepad, your text editor. All right. And then we have Show Applications. So this is going to be one that you're going to want to get semi-familiar with. So I would select Show Applications, and then you can select Search. So for instance, let's say I know I want to do something with the microphone. Now it's actually trying to guess what you want. So we have Oathcrack, which is a password cracking suite, I believe, and then we have system settings, and we have things like software. So here I'm going to go to sound, and then, okay, here's microphone, input is there. And you can see I'm literally tracking my voice as we make this video, which is great. So also, while we're here, within settings, we had talked about here, you pop into different things or different areas of settings, but there's also Wi-Fi, there's Bluetooth here, there's background notifications. You can configure these, you can do a search, basically kind of where do you want to search. You can set up your region and language, universal access. You can set up any online accounts that you want. You can set up privacy. So what do you want to track and do you not? You can set up sharing information on this. Right, by default, all sharing is off. And then of course sound. There's power settings here as well as network. Okay. So those are all part of that settings. And so let's go back and do that again. So let's do settings. So if you want to go, I don't know where settings is at, you can just go settings. And then boom, here we are. Okay, so these are really nice, and then you can search within it. So really nice options. It's actually a pretty good graphical user interface, and it does pretty well for most people. Now we will jump to places. This is similar to your files or File Explorer. So we can go to home. See, there's home, or I can do this and I'm home. If I go to documents and I select this, so let's say I already have this open, but let's do this. Let's say it's not open. So I want to go to video. So it just takes me right to that. It's kind of a shortcut. All right. And if you look at this, here's options. So you can change preferences on your actual File Explorer. You can change the behavior. So single click open, double click is what it's set to automatically. You can list columns that you want. You can have those listed here. And then you can also search in, configure search and preview. All right, so these are all different settings that you're going to want to basically kind of somewhat get familiar with. These may come in handy as you explore Kali and then go through your cyber training. All right, so we're going to go ahead and close this. Some of the additional items are going to be nested under applications. So they actually have a lot of what I'll call pre-configured folders. So as you've gone through some of the materials within this coursework, this is both a penetration testing, security, and basically forensics platform. You can live boot it. I am booted into onto a regular system, but you can do a live CD or a live boot off a USB. So within information gathering, so these are basically grouped by basically what these software tools do. So information gathering, I can use Dimitri, Maltego, NetDiscover, Nmap, Recon, Sparta, ZenMap. These are all different information gathering tools, and we're going to go through different ones as we go through this course. There's vulnerability analysis, so those are here as well, and web application analysis. So you notice like Burp Suite is here, Comics, Paro, Skitfish, SQL Map. So if I was attacking a database, I could use SQL Map to try to map that out and get additional information. There's also database assessment tools, so those are all here. Obviously, typically SQL orientated. There's also a SQLite database viewer. Then we have password attacks. So like we oops, we saw Oathcrack, there's John the Ripper, Johnny, etc. All right, there's wireless attacks. There's our wonderful friend Aircrack NG. There's Weaver. There's a number here, and then there's reverse engineering tools. So as I said, we're not going to go through every single one of these. We're just trying to give you a walkthrough. There's exploitation tools. So here is which exploitation tools are basically I'm going to exploit target systems. There's Armitage, which is a GUI version. There's the Beef XSS framework, Metasploitable, which we'll go through Metasploitable. There's Set, SQL Map, etc. Sometimes, if you notice, they do appear in multiple. So SQL Map, it does appear in multiple folders. There's sniffing and spoofing here as well. So, like for instance, there's Wireshark already installed, which is a pretty common, we'll say, network sniffing tool and analyzer. We have post-exploitation, so trying to understand what software's doing, or after I've exploited to try to do things like we have like Mimikatz is here. Here's our forensics tools, and then we have reporting tools as well. Then, of course, our friends in social engineering tools. And then here's systems services. So you actually have to do things like start and stop certain services before you can use them. So we'll go through some of that. And then we have usual applications and activities overview. So that is, my friends, a quick dive into navigation around the Kali Linux system. As we get into the hands-on labs, you'll actually be working through some of these tools and then setting up and configuring a Kali Linux instance.